In the United States of America, the recent threats by Dmitry Medvedev to start a war with the United States and even launch a nuclear strike were openly mocked, and the mockery was done in a rather humiliating manner. United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that Russians would be better off not embarrassing themselves with such statements, since, quote, "The nuclear war threats voiced by the former president of Russia and now deputy chairman of the Security Council of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, are worthless." Russia would not be able to stand up not only to the United States, but even to European countries in the event of a real war. And he reminded that the United States recently transferred its nuclear warheads to the United Kingdom. Let's analyze this situation together. The thing is, Americans are actually laughing at this main alcoholic of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, who is threatening with nuclear weapons. They openly ask what you are trying to scare them with. Do you even have any of it left in any usable condition? Do you even understand what you're threatening with and who you're threatening? My name is Alexei Pechi. Today is July 31st. We'll get to everything in order. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and leave any comment you like. Subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News, link in the video description. So today on air, the United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio openly mocked Medvedev's threats, noting that a nuclear war between the United States and Russia is something unimaginable. According to him, this is definitely not something the world will ever see. And not because the United States will be restrained, but because Russia simply has nothing to actually threaten with. Marco Rubio added that even with non-nuclear means, Russia is not capable of seriously opposing anyone, especially the United States of America. He says that Russia can attack smaller countries, act aggressively, but will not be able to seriously oppose anyone. He reminded that in 2022, the Russians failed to deal with Ukraine, which at that time did not yet have the largest army in Europe, and it was without the Western support that exists today. Next is a quote from Marco Rubio. "I don't think there's any doubt that with conventional military capabilities, the Russians would not be able to stand up to the United States or, frankly, many countries in Europe, if it comes to that. I think, to put it mildly, it would be difficult for them." The United States Secretary of State added that the United States is not concerned about a full-scale war with Russia. They are more worried about clashes or some miscalculations that, theoretically, he says, could lead to nuclear war. But in reality, according to him, there is no need to worry because the Russians would never dare to do that. He says that Russians like Medvedev are only brave in words, but in reality they are just cowards. Another quote from Marco Rubio. "Since Russians are not very good with conventional weapons, they will almost inevitably have to rely on some other means, such as tactical nuclear weapons on the battlefield. So, would you be worried about that? But we shouldn't even think about it, because it's not plausible or frankly possible for either side." And it's worth recalling how Russia's chief alcoholic, Dmitry Medvedev, tried to threaten Donald Trump, but almost got himself in trouble. Let me remind you, on July 28, United States President Donald Trump announced that he had decided to change the terms of his ultimatum on secondary tariffs for the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. He gave him until August 8 a 10-day deadline. Russia didn't like this approach, so they sent out the jester Medvedev. This short guy, the former Russian president, dared to threaten in his usual manner, in particular calling the new ultimatum a step toward war between the United States and Russia. Next is a quote from Medvedev. "Trump is playing ultimatum with Russia for 50 days or 10. He should remember two things. Russia is not Israel and not even Iran. Every new ultimatum is a threat and a step toward war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but with his own country." What's funny is that this Medvedev posted this message on an American social network in English, and most likely from an American iPhone. Trump immediately responded harshly to Medvedev's threats of war. The American leader warned him that such statements are dangerous and that he should watch his words. Quote from Trump. "Tell this Medvedev, the former president of Russia, who still thinks he's president, that he should watch his words. He's treading on very dangerous ground." Friends, I've said more than once that Trump is the kind of person who, if something personal is touched, if his ego is hurt, that's when he really loses it. But what's even funnier is that after Trump's response, Medvedev decided to keep snapping back, but more cautiously this time. This time, Russia's main alcoholic decided to respond to Trump on Telegram and in Russian. not on the X social network and not in English anymore, but on Telegram in Russian. Obviously, hoping that Russian society would rejoice at such a response, they'll read it and say, well done. But the American president might not even see this reply. Medvedev went silent on the X social network after that, though he wrote something on Telegram. He hasn't shown up on X anymore. Medvedev writes on Telegram. If words from the former Russian president provoke such a nervous reaction from the powerful United States president, it means Russia is correct and will persist on its path. And he also supposedly commented with irony on Trump's words about the dead economy of Russia and India, suggesting to remember movies about the Walking Dead and mentioning some kind of dead hand. Russian society is already in ecstasy over Dimka's actions, answered that American President Trump. Although, if Dimka is so brave, then why didn't he continue his threats on the social network X? Why did he run off to Telegram and start writing in Russian? The thing is, Medvedev, when talking about this dead hand, meant Russian doomsday weapons. This is an automatic control system for a massive retaliatory nuclear strike called Perimeter. In Russia, it's called Perimeter, but in the West, this system was named Dead Hand. But just think about what Medvedev is writing about. Officially, Dead Hand is a secret semi-automatic Russian control system designed to launch Moscow's nuclear missiles in the event that its leadership is destroyed as a result of a devastating enemy strike. So Medvedev is basically saying that if the entire Russian leadership is eliminated by a nuclear strike, we will still have time to strike back at the United States of America. Russians, who don't understand at all that nothing will be left of them in that case, are celebrating and rejoicing at Medvedev's formidable response. Well, formidable in quotation marks. If Russia is hit with a nuclear strike, there may be nothing left for them to launch in retaliation. But returning to Marco Rubio's response, it's worth mentioning that the United States recently transferred tactical nuclear weapons to the United Kingdom. And now Bloomberg writes that in this way, the states may have warned the Russian Federation that America's nuclear presence in Europe is not decreasing. It is specified that the Lakenheath base, where this nuclear weapon was brought, had previously been associated with the deployment of American nuclear warheads. They were withdrawn from there in 2008. However, since 2022, when the irrational Russians began a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It is noted that there is active construction of new facilities and preparation of infrastructure for the potential return of nuclear weapons to the Lakenheath base. Official United States representatives traditionally neither confirm nor deny such information, but analysts point to increased activity at the British nuclear facility. In the context of increasingly erratic behavior by the unruly Russians, that's the story. Share your thoughts and conclusions in the comments. I'm sure Russians will show up in the comments and start writing, especially the so-called good Russians. People often write in the comments saying, oh, what kind of journalist are you if you stoop to insulting some Russian officials? So, friends, that's not an insult. Those are still compliments to your wild idiots who can say things like that out of their mouths. When I say that Medvedev, the shorty, is the main alcoholic, it's actually a compliment. I'll leave it at that. What's your opinion? What are your conclusions? I've already said it. Write in the comments, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.